Hey, vamos a ver si de casualidad se escucha. A ver, nada más que creo que... A ver ahí. Hola, hola. A ver, yo creo que ahí está bien ya. Ujú, y nada más. Bueno, el día de hoy vamos a trabajar con... No, no se mueve. No está prendido. Vamos a trabajar... Vamos a continuar con Python. En la sesión anterior terminé la sección 3, que es Fundamentos de Python, o bueno, Python Basics. Oh, wait. Am I doing this in English, actually? Yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry. Anyway, today we continue with this learning Python. We're continuing with section 4. It's a 3.5 hour video duration section, so it's one of those really big sections on the course. So I'm going to overview it very quickly right here, and okay, so we are reaching to the section where after finishing this section, the next one is to actually install Python on my local computer. I see that there are several options, including Linux, which I'm using right now, and Windows, that is my gaming machine and my work machine. Okay, so let's get into it. Breaking the flow. Let's see, what's that about?
Welcome back. We learned about our basic Python data types. We also learned a little bit about...
Oh wait, before doing that, I actually might like to share. Okay. Let's share this on social media. There we go. I'm really moving just to Twitter, considering that keeping up with all social media at the same time is pretty difficult for me, because I can post really easily, but my interaction with Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, what was the other one? I don't. Maybe that's everything. It's really easy to post on every social media out there, but the truth is that interactions is basically zero. So what I'm going to be doing going forward is to basically just post into Twitter whenever I begin doing this, and then to LinkedIn, maybe LinkedIn, and that's pretty much it. I don't see the point on using Facebook. I don't even use my personal account anymore. Okay, it's done. Well, welcome to, let's say, Jorge Escobar channel, I guess. I'm going to be learning Python. It is my objective to become a Python developer. Obviously, I'm going to be working with building websites. That's the first thing that comes with learning Python. But my background is data engineering, so I may like to use Python for data mainly, and moving forward, I may like to learn enough to begin working in artificial intelligence. Anyway, okay, so let's get to it. I may like to. Okay. Oh. Okay, let's change to. I really need another monitor just for monitoring what I'm transmitting in the stream, but anyway. Okay, let's go.
About some of the terms that we might use. Welcome back. We learned about our basic Python data types. We also learned a little bit about some of the terms that we might use when talking about code. We learned a few best practices, but most importantly, we learned how to perform actions on these data types. We saw that there's built-in functions that we can run on any data type, such as the print function. But we also learned that most of these data types have their own methods. That is that dot, some sort of a name, and then the brackets to perform some actions on them. Now we're still scratching the surface here, but we now go into an area that gets really, really exciting. Because up until now, what we've been doing is this. Every time we write code, we do something here, and then we go to the second line and do something else, and then finally go to the third line and do something else, and so on and so forth. Our Python interpreter just went line by line, one all the way to whatever line number we have on our .py file, and just ran the code. And it ran it really fast because machines are good at that. They run code really fast. But we haven't discovered the true power of programming, and specifically programming for machines. You see, the power comes when we start to incorporate the idea of maybe running multiple lines over and over, or maybe skipping a line and going from line 1 to line 3. And in this section, we're going to talk about the idea of conditions and conditional logic. We're going to talk about looping and loops, where we can perform actions hundreds, thousands, millions of times over and over, something that machines are really, really good at. And that's when programming becomes really powerful, because machines can do certain tasks a lot better and a lot faster than humans. So we're now going to break into a new world where instead of going from 1, 2, 3, everything in order, we're going to start to break some of that apart so that we have more control over our programs than just going line by line. Let's find out how to do that in the next video.
Conditional logic. I guess we're starting with if.
Let's talk about conditional logic, an important concept all over programming. What do I mean by conditional logic? We've learned about Booleans, right? We have true and we have false. And some of you might be wondering why they're so useful. And when it comes to conditional logic, Booleans are really, really important. For example, let's say we create a variable, is old. And you know what? We're going to create a car that automatically detects if you can start the engine. Maybe if you're not old enough, the engine won't start and it won't let you drive. So that they make sure that this car is super safe and only people that are perhaps over 18 can drive it.
Whoa.
So how can we code something like that? Let's assume Tesla has a new feature like it. Well, we'll have something like is old and we'll set this to true, right? Maybe we have something else.
Wow, I will actually argue that will be socially, I don't know. Just imagine that your car won't even start up if you are not 18 years old, which implies that somebody else who's not yourself may actually stop your car or avoid it from even turning it on, and you have no control over it, and you're supposed to be the owner. Just imagine that we had like a social credit system, and that if your social credit gets low enough, you're not going to be able to even turn on your car, although you pay for it. So I don't know. Just watching what's happening on the United States right now, they are actually building their own ministry of truth. Pretty Orwellian in my opinion, but anyway.
Maybe it checks a license to make sure that we have a license. So we can say is license. And then we can set it to true. Now, these could change, true and false, depending on the user and the driver. But when I talk about conditionals, this is what I mean. In Python, we can use the if keyword to say if some condition exists, and this is just me writing it, it doesn't exist. You can see that I get a red underline with invalid syntax. But here we want to say a condition that evaluates to true or false. In our case, we can say, hey, if is old, which, what does it evaluate to? Well, it evaluates to true. If that's true, then let's say print, you are old enough to drive. Now, there's a few new things here. One, I've added a semicolon or a colon.
There is no
and then you'll see here that the indentation is different. As a matter of fact, when I press enter after the colon, you see that it automatically gives me a space. This tells the Python interpreter, I'm going to do an if statement, a conditional operation. And if this happens to be true, run everything that's inside of here that has this indentation. And if I do something without the indentation, let's say print, check, check, this to the Python interpreter is like a completely new line. It is not part of this if block. And if you're using the REPL, you see over here I get a little minus sign. If I click this, you see how it hides? Well, what it does is it's saying, hey, this is a code block over here. It's an entire thing in itself. But anything outside that is not indented, well, doesn't belong to it. So to a Python interpreter, it's going to say, I have this line, and then I have this line. Let me show you what I mean. If I run this program, I get, you are old enough to drive, and then I also get check, check. But what if I say is old is now false? What do you think will happen? If I run this, I get check, check.
Check.
Our Python interpreter is going to say, hey, set variable is old to false. Hey, set is licensed equals to true. And then it's going to go to line 3. Nope, nothing there. I'm going to keep going. Line 4. Hey, if is old, is this true? No, if old is false. And the interpreter is going to say, okay, I'm only supposed to run this piece of code if this is true. Because this is now false, I'm just going to completely ignore what's underneath here and just go to the next line that has, well, no indentation. So it's going to print, check, check. And this is the power of conditionals. We're able to essentially skip lines. The interpreter doesn't even care what's in here because I just told my program to skip from line 4 to line 6. How cool is that? So we learned that there's this if keyword, but there's also another thing we can use called else. And you'll notice here that I didn't add it to the indentation. And else, as the name suggests, simply says, hey, if this something is true, then do this. Otherwise, also else, do this. And again, you see that I've added the indentation. So try to guess what's about to happen in this program. If I click run, I get check, check, because it's saying, hey, is old, is that true? Nope, it's not true. Okay, I'm going to completely ignore that. The interpreter sees else. Okay, well, this wasn't true, so I'm going to run. Whenever this evaluates to false, I'm going to always run print, check, check. What if I change is old to now equal to true?
Okay.
What will happen next? Well,
you're old enough.
You are old enough to drive.
You're not
else
printing
only runs
check, check.
if the if block of code evaluates to false. Very, very cool. All right, let me ask you another question. What if I did print here? And let's change this to you are not of age. If I run this,
it's going to print
well, I hope by now you agree that this is the expected behavior. Because if old is true, I'm going to print this. And then Python interpreter is going to say, well, this was true, so I'm going to completely ignore the else block and then just go to the next line. What's on line 8? Nothing. So I'm going to go to line 9 and I'm going to print okay, okay, okay. As you can see, we're now controlling the flow of our programs, where instead of going from 1 to 9, just line by line, we're now saying at line 4, do some sort of check, and based on that, skip a few lines. Very, very cool. All right, there's one other thing I want to show you, and it's the else if. And I know this kind of looks weird. You would think that it'll be else if, but no.
Yeah, elif.
It's else if.
Okay.
And what do you think this does? Well, you use it in combination with if. You say if something, if otherwise, else, if another condition, so let's say is licensed, then do another condition. So let's say print, you can drive now.
Okay.
So let's go through this again. I'm going to say, is this person old enough? If that person is old enough and this evaluates to true,
okay,
well then I want you to run this. Otherwise, I want you to run this condition. Hey, is this true? No. If it's not true, then jump to else. So what will happen here? If I click run, we get true for the first conditional block right over here. So automatically Python interpreter is going to say, well, we just got true here, so I'm going to ignore this, and then print okay, okay. But let's say that is old is now false. What will happen next? If I click run, this is false, so Python interpreter is going to say, nope, not going to care about this block. And I'm going to go, hey, else if, a condition, hey, is this person licensed? Yep, they are. So I'm going to print you can drive now and ignore else. So it works like this. What if both of these were false? Well, as you can imagine, the Python interpreter is going to ignore. It's going to run this, say, nope, this is false, this, nope, this is false. And then finally, it's going to run this. You see that else is a catch-all. That is, if none of these conditions are true, then we're just going to run this. So it's a backup in a sense. Hey, if all things fail, then just do this. Very, very cool. Now, if you look at this program, you're thinking, this program doesn't really work that well, does it? I mean, we're checking if the person is old and if the person is licensed, but shouldn't we check both? We want somebody who has a license and who's old enough to drive. This is a buggy program. If we implement this in a Tesla, well, we're gonna get a lot of lawsuits, right? Because we can get somebody who's maybe licensed but isn't old enough, which I guess doesn't make sense. But we can get somebody who is old enough but never got their driver's license, and somehow we get access to the car and they can start the engine and drive. And that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So how can we fix this? You know
With an and?
The power is that this is an expression, right? An expression, if you remember, is something that produces a value. And that means that this doesn't have to, just have true here. It could be an expression. So I could say, if is old and is licensed, then I can do that. And this is something new.
So the logical and is just
this is another keyword in Python. And
the way to do it.
More of these keywords. But this should read like English, right? If is old and is licensed,
if he's old and is licensed.
Now remove the elif, and then here, both expressions need to evaluate to true. That is, whatever happens here, this has to evaluate to true, and this has to evaluate to true. And only when both are true, again, as and.
And this is one of the things that I really like about the English language. If you are naming your Boolean variables like is and the name of the variable, is licensed, is old, it's really useful to read it in the code inside if statements like this one, because you are reading if is old and is licensed, and in common language, you are so close to the actual expression of if this person is old enough and this person is licensed, that you are basically just reading this, and even if you are not proficient in Python, you get the hang of what you are actually evaluating here. So it's a really nice touch to have your Boolean variables like this. Is something
states, then you're old enough to drive and you have a license. So that if I run this, well, I get an error, right? Because, or not an error, but it goes into the else block because both of these are false. If only one of them is true and I click run, you are not of age because both of these have to be true. If I click run, hey, all right, the car is starting. You can drive away with your Tesla. Okay, before I finish this video, because this is a lot, I want to just note one thing. That is the else-if statement. The else-if statement is really, really useful because when you have code like this, where you have an if statement and an else statement, usually you only see one of each. I mean, sure, in another part of the program, I could have another if statement and an if statement with another else statement inside of here. But usually, when you have this grouping together, you only see one if and one else, but you can have multiple else-ifs. So I can have else-if another condition here, and then I can have another else-if another condition here. And you can have as many as you want.
Many
Eventually,
conditions.
the program is going to either evaluate one of these conditions to true, or it's going to go into the else block. But usually, you follow this order. All right, that was a lot. Let's take a break and explore this topic a little bit more. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Okay. Just a little bit. We are in conditional logic. So this is basically the if-else statement for Python. Give me a second here. I just remembered that, let's switch to Twitter for a little bit. Please don't be porn. Thank you. I'm going to share, or may I say, last week I helped a student creating a trigger for MySQL, and I just remembered that he asked me to basically remove the stream for that day because the teacher is going to Google it, and many students are following me. So he asked me to basically remove the video of the stream. So let me, he asked me to at least hold it for this past Friday, so yesterday. And there we go. It's going to be public right now. And let's share it on the internet. There we go. There we go. There we go. I wonder if okay. Oh, nice. Ding. Okay, but where is my? There we go. No sé si me oye. Okay. Okay, that's done. We may continue.
I want to add a quick note about this spacing that we see in this code. Now, this isn't just for Python. In other languages, you'll always see this. You're not going to see that every single line of code always starts as well in the first space. Different languages will use this differently, but in order to organize code, usually you'll see some indentation like this. Now, Python, however, is unique because the indentation and spaces that we see here makes the interpreter see it and say, hey, this means something. The interpreter would actually see the space and say, because there's space here, I know that this is part of the if block. In other languages, like JavaScript, well, you have something similar, but usually you'll have an if statement and then some condition, followed by, make sure I spell condition right, followed by something like a curly brace. And in here, whatever is in here, you can see that I still get the space and I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But JavaScript interpreter doesn't really care that there's spaces. If I want, I could write my code just on
in a
one
single line, yeah.
And it's still valid JavaScript code. So people usually do the spacing more for style purposes. Python, on the other hand, is not just for styling that we do this, but because the interpreter actually finds meaning in the spaces. which is actually one of the big selling point with Python. It's very clean. There's no extra stuff here that makes it difficult. I mean, it's just English, right? If is old and if is licensed, then print this. It's just really nice to read and really clean. Now, if you notice here, my editor, and we're going to talk about editors and IDEs in an upcoming section, but if you are using the proper tools, this automatically is created for you. Now, in the programming world, there's this debate about tabs and spaces, and we're not going to get into it. It's frankly a little bit silly. That is, some people prefer to here, if they want to create a space, they might use spaces or they might use tabs. At the end of the day, with Python, the rule is you can use spaces, you can use the tab, but the idea that if you use spaces, you usually use 4 spaces. It's just a standard. Now, if you notice here, I actually don't have 4 spaces. It's 2 spaces here. And that is because up until now, well, I've just been following along whatever this editor gives me. But over here, there's an auto format button. If I click on this, it automatically formats my code into the
4
format.
spaces.
You see right over here that I now have 4 spaces. But you see that the code still works. Again, it's because at the end.
Wait, the appropriate format according to whom? Unless it comes from either a styling guide approved by the author of Python or the author of Python himself, well, I will not take it as well, that's like discussing spaces versus tabs. I guess it enters that realm, but anyway.
The day, the important part is that there's a distinction between hierarchies, that is the top and then maybe the children. But the interpreter itself is going to notice these spaces. So you do have to be careful because based on where this print is, as soon as I add a tab in here and I click run, well, I get is old and is licensed. But as soon as one of this is false, I click run, you see that OK runs only if this condition fails. Again, if previously both of these were true, I only get the first line printed. So that little space here
is considered inside.
So you have to really be careful with this. And luckily, your editor or where you code is going to help you out with this. But it is a gotcha that if you're just starting out, you want to be mindful of. All right, no more debates about spaces and tabs. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
That's what I don't think is going to... Wait, truthfully, falsely? What's
this
that?
video, I'm going to talk about the idea of truthy and falsy.
Okay.
What do they mean? And you'll hear this a lot in Python programming. You see, up until now, you've used booleans here, as values. So it was really easy. If true and true, then run this code. But Python can do other things as well. For example, if this was 5 and this was, let's say, hello, what do you think will happen here in our program? Well,
I don't know.
You are old enough to drive and you have a license. Is that what you expected? And this is because what Python does underneath the hood is actually convert these to booleans for you. So it's almost as if it is doing this. Remember type conversion.
But how?
Converting the type to boolean as soon as we get to this if statement, because Python is saying, hey, I want true or false. I don't care what is old is. I don't care what is licensed is. Just give me true or false so I know whether to do this or to go to the else block.
Okay.
Now, if I was to just print, let's do this here. Let's do print,
I guess
boolean, hello. And
an integer, as long as it's not 0, is going to be considered true.
And this is what we call a truthy
A
value.
string is the string is not empty.
If we run the Boolean
I guess it's
type
true.
conversion on it, it evaluates into true. What's a falsy value? Well, if I do 0, and if I do, let's say, an empty string, and I click run,
just like I guess.
that is, it's not actually false, but it is falsy because
it's
if we run Boolean on it, it's going to say, oh, this is false.
I get
and
it.
0, that's false. And that kind of makes sense, right? And
Yeah,
if you
it's
actually
pretty much
know
the same
Stack
thing
Overflow,
as
you've never seen
Java.
Stack Overflow before. If you ever have programming questions and you're Googling them, usually the top 5 answers will contain either 1 or 2 Stack Overflow answers. And basically what happens is people ask questions like, what is truthy and falsy in Python? And you get answers. So you can see over here that it has 4 answers, and you usually look for the check mark, which means that this is a verified answer. It means that, hey, this question owner has accepted it as the best answer. So the person who asked this question just said, yep, this is the right answer. This is the best one. But you also have other people voting. So you can see that this answer received 46 marks. And although it was marked as the correct answer by the user, maybe somebody else came along later on and gave an even better answer. So now we have 123 upvotes. And you see that this answer is a lot better. All values are considered truthy except for the following. So you can actually see here that in Python, these values are considered falsy. You can see 0 here, you can see an empty string here, and then there's a few other ones. Empty set, you have an empty dictionary, empty list, empty tuple. You have decimals. You have things like fractions. You have 0.0. False is that. And also none is falsy. So that if I type in none here, that's false too. Now you don't need to memorize these because most of the time it makes sense. Right?
Yeah,
but it helps
makes
us do
sense.
conditional logic very nicely. For example, let's remove this. And let's say that we have a user. And this user has to have a password and a username. If, let's say, the username is Johnny and the password is 123. Well, instead of me saying, hey, if this user has password and username, and we're not checking if the username exists or password exists, we just want to make sure, hey, did this person fill out the form and did they try to submit a username and password? I can just simply say password and username.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about converting this to a Boolean or anything like that because if password and username exist, then try to log them in. And you see that
try
it
to
reads
log
the
in.
nicer. Because each one of these get evaluated into a truthy and falsy value. It's a nice little feature to keep Python, well, nice and simple and reading like English. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's actually really useful because if you don't have Boolean conversion, if you don't have Boolean conversion like this, you are basically forced to create an expression that returns true or false value. before doing and store that inside another variable. So the advantage of evaluating expressions as truth or false by themselves, it really does come in handy, but it may be mal-used, or you may find yourself with unintended consequences if you abuse this.
Conditional logic. We saw the if, elif, and then
Ternary operator. Yay! We do have it.
Ternary operator. Now, this is still the
A
same as
single line if else.
but it's a shortcut. So you can only use these on certain conditional logic. So it doesn't mean that, hey, this is just an entirely new way. This is a shortcut in a sense for you to make your code a little bit cleaner. Let's have a look. By the way, these ternary operators can also be called conditional expressions. And when you hear the word expression, that should mean something to you, right? It's an expression because it evaluates to a value. So a ternary operator or a conditional expression is an operation that evaluates to something based on the condition being true or not. And it's actually a new feature of Python as of version 2.4. So let's have a look. The way we use this is to say is condition. If this is true, then do this. So this is the condition if true. And bear with me here. It is a little bit confusing at first. We say if, and here we give condition. Otherwise, condition if else. All right. That is a little confusing. So let's go through. So the if is going to check this condition. So it doesn't actually start with here. It's going to say, hey, if this condition. Now, this is going to evaluate to either true or false. If it's true, then we're going to do this. Otherwise, we're going to do this. So let me show you an example of how.
Okay, wait. Is condition if true? Okay, if condition to be evaluated, else condition if else. Okay, so basically, okay, this is a ternary operator similar to JavaScript. With the main difference is that the order of the conditions and the evaluation are well, they are different basically. In JavaScript, the first one to write is the actual condition, then whatever happens when it's true, then whatever happens when it's false. And here we have first whatever happens when it's true, then the condition to be evaluated, and then the whatever happens when it's false.
That would work. Let's say we're trying to determine if a user is your friend. So we'll say is friend. And here we can set true or false for friend. Maybe we can check on Facebook if users can message you. Or on Twitter, whether Twitter users can give you direct messages. Well, here, and let's do can message. And here we can do our ternary operator. We're going to say message aloud if. So this is if the condition is true. The condition is, hey, is this person your friend? Otherwise, condition that is false, well, I'm going to say not allowed to message. And you can see here that this is a one-liner. It looks like two lines, but you can see over here that it's not really. It's just that we're wrapping so we can see the entire code. So let's run this and see what can message prints. If I run this, message is allowed because, well, we've...
Give me a minute. No. Go back. Just give me a second here. Just checking the chat. Okay, there we go.
Signed message allowed to can message because, well, the condition was true. If this person wasn't my friend and I run this, not allowed to message. Because the condition, the if condition, evaluates to false. I know the ordering here can be a little bit confusing, so you might have to look at it a couple of times, and you do need to use it a few times to really remember it, but this is the general rule. Condition if true, if condition, else condition if. Not if else, if false. Can't spell. All right, a nice shorthand way to do something when a condition is either true or false, or evaluates to true or false. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Wait, go back. I didn't actually get it. Is that the ternary operator? Condition if true. If. Okay, so do this if this happens, else do something else. Okay, I get it now. Let's rewatch it a little bit.
On Twitter, whether Twitter users can give you direct messages. Well, here, and let's do can message. And here we can do our ternary operator. We're going to say message aloud if. So this is if the condition is true. The condition is, hey, is this person your friend? Otherwise, condition that is false, well, I'm going to say not allowed to message. And you can see here that this is a one-liner. It looks like two lines, but you can see over here that it's not really. We're wrapping so we can see the entire code. So let's run this and see what can message prints. If I run this,
and actually he's not assigning anything there.
Assigned message allowed to can message because, well, the condition was true. If this person wasn't my friend and I run this, not allowed to message. Because the condition, the if condition, evaluates to false. I know the ordering here can be a little bit confusing, so you might have to look at it a couple of times, and you need to use it a few times to really remember it. But this is a general rule.
Do this if
else,
this happens, else do something else. Okay.
Right. A nice shorthand way to do something when a condition is either true or false, or evaluates to true or false. All right. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm going to need to code something like that in order to
Let's talk
remember.
about another topic that sounds a lot more confusing, short-circuiting, than it actually is. It's quite simple. Short-circuiting looks something like this. Remember when I taught you the word and? So we can use, let's say, for example, is friend equals to true, and let's say is user is equal to true. And I can do an expression here saying is friend and is user. Now, in here, when we run this, let's print it here just so we can see. If I run this, I get true.
True. It's evaluating the expression.
So that if I have this as an if block, let's say if it was if is friend and is user, print best friends forever. Now, short-circuiting can be done when we use something like or, which we haven't seen before. But again, you can see here that it's highlighted in blue, so it is a keyword, a Python keyword.
Huh?
Now, or says if either one of these conditions are true, then run this piece of code.
Okay.
If I run this, I get best friends forever. Now, let me ask you this. Which operation do you think is more performant? The or the and? Is there a difference?
Yeah.
In fact, there is because of short-circuiting. You see, when I do or here, because I only care if either one of these is true,
You put
Python interpreter is going
something
to say
false. Yeah.
it's friend, and it's going to evaluate that and say, oh, this is true. And then it's going to see the word or, and it's going to say, hey, I don't care what this is. Maybe this is a really heavy
it doesn't
operation
matter.
I need to look up. Well, I don't really care because
It doesn't
this
matter.
Is true.
The
Whether
first
this
one is already
or
true.
this is false, I don't
Doesn't
really care.
matter.
Either way, I'm going to have to print this. As you can see, it's still printed.
Yeah, it's not evaluating
So
anything.
short-circuiting happens when the interpreter is smart enough to say, I already did enough work. I don't care what this is. This is just wasted work if I do it. So I'm going to short-circuit and say, hey, I'm going to just ignore this and I'm going to start printing. So using or is a little bit more efficient. But again, it depends on what you need. If you need to check if both is friend and is user is true, you'll have to use and. But this works both ways with and as well. For example, if is friend is false, this is going to get short-circuited because I'm going to say, hey, if is friend is
What is
false,
going on?
I don't really care what is user is because there's
Wait. Is the I don't know what's going on, but I just watch a black screen right now. Then never mind.
no
I
way
guess.
that both of these are true. I've already seen that one of them is false. So I'm going to ignore this and I'm going to print this. And when I say I mean our good old friend Python interpreter.
Okay.
Now, this topic of short-circuiting doesn't really get taught in beginner Python courses, but now if you hear this, maybe you hear this in an interview, as you can see, it sounds a lot more difficult than it actually is. And frankly, it makes a lot of sense, right? We want our machines to be efficient, and it is quite efficient due to short-circuiting. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Actually, I guess this course is more like learn Python without learning programming, because these ideas are explained on the surface. So this course is directed to the audience for this course is actually for people like myself. I already learned how the basics of programming with other programming languages, so I don't really need to dwell too much on the what an if statement is or short-circuiting is. I already know what that is in another programming language. So, but I am concerned about recommending this course on a newbie with his or for his first programming language. I will not recommend this for a noob. But it's really great for someone like me, because I already got experience with other programming languages, and taking 10 minutes watching somebody explaining what an if statement is not really optimal for my liking. So this is actually great for me, for myself. Is that it? Okay, let's go to the next one.
Welcome back, and let's talk another term, logical operators. And they're very, very useful when it comes to conditional logic. Let's have a look. Logical operators are, well, as a matter of fact, you've actually seen them before. And is a logical operator. Or is a logical operator. It allows us to perform logic between two things. What else is a logical operator? Well, let me list it out for you. We have greater than, less than, equal to. Let's actually use them in an example. Is 4 greater than 5? Well, if I print this, what do you think will happen? Shouldn't be a surprise. That's false. 4 is not greater than 5. This is a logical operator that you may have seen in math class. If I do the opposite, is 4 less than 5? That makes sense. That's true. What about is 4 equal to 5? If I run this, I get false. Now, why did I use 2 equals here? Why not just do this? Well, if I run
because this is an assignment.
Syntax.
Yeah,
Keyword
that's
can't be
expression. Yeah.
It's because, remember, equal is what we use to assign to a variable, right? And if you remember, I told you that a variable in Python can start with a with a number. It has to be a letter or
Yeah.
underscore. So when I do this, it's going to error because the interpreter is going to say, hey, I'm trying to assign variable 4 the value of 5. And, well, that's not really allowed. So we use double
Yeah.
equals to tell the interpreter, hey, I'm not assigning a variable here. I want to compare things. And we can compare different things. I can do hello equals to hello equal to true. What if I do A is greater than B? I get false. Now, why is that? This I want you to Google on your own and figure out why is A greater than B.
I'm not Googling that, but my guess is that single characters are really assigned a number inside. Probably A is lesser than B because of the order, alphabetical order that is. So my guess is like A may have a value of 10, for example. B is going to be 11. That's why A is not greater than B. I may be wrong, but that's how it used to be with ANSI characters.
Do A, is that greater than capital A?
Yeah.
That's true. This is interesting, and this is actually quite an interesting reason. So I know it's easy for me to just give you an answer, but I want you to practice Googling this. And the reason I'm not giving you an answer is it's also because it's not very important. Because
Yeah,
most of the time,
it doesn't really matter.
easy to understand and understandable. You're most likely using greater than and less than with numbers. So if you see something like this in code,
Yeah, if I see something like that, I will wonder why. I mean, it needs to be a really good reason to be maybe not hard-coded literals, characters, maybe not, but maybe a variable comparing letters and see which one is greater than, I don't know.
well, you wouldn't know what's going on. What is this person trying to compare? Why are they doing is
Why?
greater than capital A?
Yeah, I mean,
It's not something that you see very often, but the reason you get this expression is quite interesting, so I do recommend you Google into it. Like I said, I'm a strong believer in not holding your hand the entire way. I know so far the videos up until now have been quite easy, especially if you are an experienced programmer, but as we progress, you'll see that after this course, you need to figure things out on your own. And my job is not to just handhold you the entire way, it's to develop the skills in you to become an employable programmer. So I hope you bear with me as I just...
Well, I will argue that you actually have a certain degree of hand-holding to be done because this course is not free. Okay. Ahorita voy. Okay. Well, yeah, the course is not free. Nevertheless, I believe that the teacher does have a responsibility to do some hand-holding, maybe not the full way around, but at least enough to basically earn the money that you are charging for the course. In this case, I do agree with him that this is not really important enough for him to actually deliver the full answer. It's like a fun trivia to do, but not enough. Well, guys, I need to... Guys, there is nobody here actually, but never mind. Well, I need to go to get something to eat and I'm going to be back right after because I want to complete this section today. Besides, it's weekend, so I really want to complete this course as soon as I can and begin building stuff. So let's take a break and be back in 30, okay?